40 years ago today, on June 22nd, 1984, John G. Avildsen's original, The Karate Kid, opened in theaters, and who could have imagined that 40 years later, we're talking about the last season of a TV show called Cobra Kai. Unbelievable.
She buries Judy in a second. She buries Judy? Remember?
You're dead meat.
Hey! The lights!
And a hearty welcome and happy Saturday to one and all. This is episode 221, back in the car, of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you for spending some of this Saturday afternoon drive with me here in New York. We're going to skip past all of that promotional jazz once again and get right to the guts of the episode. And as you all know, if you've even gotten this far into episode 221, I do pride myself on being a historian. I do have the academics behind it. I did graduate New York University with honors with the class of 1997 with a degree in cinema studies. But even someone like me, who was known as Google before Google when it came to movies, go back to the 90s, people would ask me these weirdo movie questions. Who was the star of the 1921 movie Greed, directed by Erich von Stroheim? And I would immediately say, Gibson Gowland. Who? Gibson Gowland. Who? Gibson Gowland. But even though I was Mr. Trivia, there are certain points of trivia, even movies, filmmakers, actors, actresses, Academy Awards, there are things, people, places, movies, concepts that I love, and yet there are certain bits of trivia that just go right by me. And it doesn't land, and I find out about it along with everyone else. So here I was this morning, minding my business, posted on Instagram, and I go to the feed just to, is there any breaking news or what's happening? And I see a post from Ralph Macchio, the Long Island man. I think he lives in Ronkonkoma now, if I'm not mistaken. It's not far from where I live. I ought to, go over to, I'm not going to go to his house. But a friend of mine met him by chance at a restaurant a number of years ago. He said he was the nicest guy, just as you would hope. Just as you would hope, a mega celebrity, someone that many of us grew up watching the Karate Kid movies. What a hell of a nice guy. But Ralph Macchio, his post this morning, happy 40th anniversary to the Karate Kid, which opened in theaters on June 22nd, 1984. Now, I knew it was summer of 1984, but I gotta tell you, I thought it was late May, early June. I did not think it was June 22nd. I thought that Karate Kid came out at the same time as the kind of Star Trek 3, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. I thought that it was part of the first burst of big movies of that summer, not the second wave. So, trivia that I didn't know, and now I do. And especially because of the incredible success of the TV series Cobra Kai, Karate Kid feels more relevant than ever. The original Karate Kid was a great movie at the time. Critics loved it. It's 90% on Rotten Tomatoes. This is not where, it's just nostalgia because of your Gen X, you're old now. No. The original Karate Kid, it is a formula film. It was directed by John G. Avildsen, who also did the original Rocky. The similarities are not coincidental. It is a Rocky story. But this is a terrific film. It spawned a franchise. You can argue that only the first movie is any good. Karate Kid 2 is okay. Karate Kid 3 is not good, as much as I love Thomas Ian Griffith. What a home run hitter. Great villain. Next Karate Kid, love Hilary Swank, movie's terrible. Honestly, the Jaden Smith and Jackie Chan 2010 soft reboot, I think it's the second best Karate Kid film. It's not really that much praise, but at least it's serviceable. And man, Jackie Chan is good in that film. But I remember when Karate Kid came out, and that's the summer I had already seen, unfortunately, Star Trek: The Search for Spock, when I had the opportunity to see Temple of Doom in theaters, and I chose to see Star Trek 3, which is an okay movie. It's not terrible, but it ain't Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. It's not even close. It's just okay. It's like a 2.5 to 3 star out of 4 movie. Man, I could have seen Temple of Doom in surround sound, Dolby 6-track, and I fucking wanted to see Star Trek: The Search for Spock instead. Woe is me. So I didn't catch Karate Kid in its initial theatrical run, and it was a significant hit. It grossed over 130 million in its initial theatrical run, that's a big number for 1984. I mean, it's not Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom level, but it's a big number for 1984. I caught it, not surprisingly, and I don't remember renting it. We had South Shore Video not far from us in Piqua. It was a little less than a half a mile walk, so certainly doable, but I feel like I didn't see the Karate Kid until it premiered on, the HBO Cinemax. So back in the day, HBO and Cinemax were joined, and I guess they still are, HBO Max, like that's not an accident, but the Movie Channel and Showtime, where, they had the same parent company, you would say, as HBO and Cinemax, even all those years ago, had the same parent company. So it's another way of saying there were certain movies that were Showtime, the Movie Channel, and there were other movies that were HBO Cinemax. Now, if you had a movie you wanted to see, and it was only going to be on Showtime and the Movie Channel, you had two choices: rent the fucking movie, or get a subscription to Showtime and or the Movie Channel. But Karate Kid was on HBO and Cinemax a lot. It was yet another film from that era, and I've talked about The Natural, Chariots of Fire, Victory, Cocoon, Mask with Eric Stoltz. There are certain films circa like early to mid 80s that were in very heavy rotation because people watched every time they were on. And The Karate Kid was one of those films. Also, as a movie that was PG, they could have more screenings. R-rated movies, HBO always stuck to. I mean, you could say it's stupid, this is ridiculous, we're all adults, well, we're not. But they stuck to a very strict code that they did not show R-rated films except between the hours of 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. So there's a narrow window when they would show the big premieres that were R-rated movies, because that happened just as frequently as PG movies. But I had heard so many of my friends had seen Karate Kid in theaters, and or my dad rented it or whatever it might be. And I saw it on HBO, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I didn't know that necessarily, is it as good as Rocky? Because I had already seen and loved the first the first 3 Rocky movies. I loved all 3 of those. In fact, Rocky 3, I saw in theaters. That's the only Rocky movie. Funny now that I'm thinking about it. The only Rocky movie I've seen in theaters is Rocky 3. But I had seen Rockies 1 and 2 at home on HBO. Loved them both. And even at age 11, I understood that Karate Kid was following the Rocky formula. I wasn't that dense. I got it. But the movie worked. And I normally was not somebody who rooted for the underdog. It wasn't really the way I was wired, because I was a disagreeable, antisocial, angry kid. But there was something about, I don't know if it was Ralph's performance or just the fact that Daniel LaRusso was not written the way I expected. And also, if you're watching the film for the first time, his character is not presented in the way that you might think. He is not a coward, and it's a very important distinction. He is half the size of Johnny Lawrence. Daniel LaRusso is a skinny kid who looks like the wind could blow him away. That is how small and skinny and scrawny he is. And William Zabka, it's not like a big kid or a huge kid, but William Zabka already looked like somebody who was very athletic and who worked out. So even if Johnny Lawrence was not into karate. He looks like he could take Daniel LaRusso and stuff him into a garbage can. He is just a much bigger individual physically. He is an intimidating personality. He had that sneer and the snarl and that kind of inflection in his voice. But it may have been the fact that Daniel LaRusso's instinct is not to run from a fight. His instinct is to stand his ground and give as good as he can. And maybe that's what I responded to, because I hadn't seen the film in a couple of decades, and I guess it was around COVID that it was on Netflix, and I watched, the first 3, and there was a lot of chatter about Cobra Kai, and I got into that. And I guess I hadn't seen Karate Kid in long enough where I forgot just how scrappy the pre-Mr. Miyagi Daniel LaRusso is. He's not just going to fold. He is not going to run scared. He might be scared, but he's there, as they said late. Or no, I should say, as they said in Rocky 4. Rocky's been on the receiving end so far, but he's here to fight. And Daniel, in that first showdown with Johnny Lawrence, he's trying to win a fucking fight. He doesn't want it, but he's also not begging Johnny Lawrence, please don't hurt me, please don't hurt me. He's given it what he's got. And maybe that's what I responded to. This is not a coward. This is not that this is somebody who understands right and wrong, and if he's getting fucked with, even if it means he's going to get busted up. He doesn't want to, but he's not running. He's planting his feet, and he's going to try to give it back to him. So I remember I liked everything about the movie. I liked the unfolding and the way Mr. Miyagi is introduced, and the kind of unconventional teaching techniques and all of that, wax on, wax off. And we used to joke about it in school. Once I saw the movie, I felt like I was part of a club. Now I could discuss this film with everybody else. The thing is, yes, it follows the Rocky formula, but it's not. Rocky's an underdog story, but it's not the same underdog story, even though it's athletic competition. The fist. At Rocky, there's no feet involved, but it is the way of the fist. But it's not the same thing, because if we actually compare, so Rocky Balboa is a massive underdog. He's a massive underdog. He's basically just, as he puts it, he's a ham and egger. Yeah, he's a professional fighter. He's talented. Everybody knows who has seen Rocky Balboa since Kid's Got Talent. He's just not focused. He doesn't train properly. He kind of pissed off Mickey, his trainer, and Mickey kind of gave up on it. But Mickey had always said Balboa had a lot of talent. Balboa could have been a contending fighter. He could have been a top 10 heavyweight, but he just didn't apply himself properly. Well, bear this in mind. Rocky Balboa, unlike Daniel LaRusso trying to win the All Valley Karate Championships, he's a massive underdog. But he's a massive underdog in every fight that he would undertake until he reaches a point where he actually understands what he's doing and can apply the lessons of Mr. Miyagi in a real-time, real-world scenario. The Rocky Balboa that we meet at the beginning of the film has nothing in common with Daniel LaRusso. Absolutely nothing. He's a strong arm for Gatso, the loan shark, who's actually a much more sympathetic character than you would expect. But he's a strong arm for Lone Shark. The Rocky Balboa of Rocky, before Mickey trains him, he could kick the shit out of the next 9,999 people. So there is a huge gulf in terms of, we call somebody an underdog. Rocky Balboa is a trained fighter. He will kill the average person in a street fight in less than 5 minutes if he is told, you have to kill this guy, and doesn't have a choice. Daniel LaRusso can't do that. Daniel LaRusso does not have any fighting skills to speak of as the story starts. Rocky Balboa, he'd been arrested because according to the law, a professional prize fighter's fists are weapons. Rocky Balboa is already a dangerous individual. He's a sweetheart, though. No, we know this. I'm not saying he isn't, but he's not somebody that you would ever fuck with. You wouldn't want him to threaten to break your thumbs, because obviously he had done some real bad shit for Gatso. So that is an enormous difference between Rocky and Karate Kid. It is massive leveling difference. But there are so many predictable moments in Karate Kid, and even at the time, it's predictable the way the relationship with Allie and the misunderstanding at the country club and the whole culture clash where Daniel and his mom are pretty much broke and Allie is wealthy, and we think that Johnny Lawrence is wealthy, and he is, just not as we are led to believe. And this is something that the Cobra Kai TV series did so well by making Johnny Lawrence the central character. It's not that Ralph Macchio's Daniel LaRusso in the Cobra Kai TV series. It's not that Daniel is a villain. But Johnny Lawrence is less of a villain. He's much more relatable. There were enough gaps in Johnny Lawrence's theoretical backstory in Karate Kid where the creators, was it John Hurwitz? I forgot the other guy's name. But where the creators were able to fill in gaps to make him much more relatable. And how he can legitimately, in his mind, argue, yeah, maybe I went too hard at Daniel, but I don't see myself as the bad guy here. He doesn't say it like that, but the idea is that Daniel LaRusso was an antagonistic force in his life. And in the world of Karate Kid that we're presented, that's not the case. Johnny Lawrence is not necessarily a bad kid, a bad person, but he has fallen under the influence of a very bad teacher. And that's why Mr. Miyagi, no such thing, bad student, only bad teacher. He is saying that Sensei Kreese has taken these otherwise very young, talented, athletic kids and turned them into something that this is not what karate is supposed to be. This is not it. Karate is a last resort. If somebody threatens you and yours, you give it to them. It is not something to use to bully people. And that's Mr. Miyagi's issue. That is his anger. But in all of those moments, whether it's the first Karate Kid, the second, and going forward, even the next Karate Kid with Hilary Swank, Miyagi's process is, I'm not firing unless fired upon. And Daniel, for all of the flaws that we see of him in Cobra Kai, there is a great moment hearkening back to the first Karate Kid and the teachings of the wise and incredible Mr. Miyagi, where Daniel says, I think that he's addressing Kreese. You know damn well I'm not throwing the first punch. And it is a moment that reminds us of Miyagi, and that as many bad actions as Daniel takes in Karate Kid, I'm not even talking about Cobra Kai in this instance. The Halloween costume thing, he aggressed upon Johnny. No, he didn't deserve to get beaten within an inch of his life. Where those kids, I hate to say it, they were going to put him in the hospital for sure. They could have killed him. If they caught him with the wrong kind of shot, as angry as Johnny was in that moment, he could have killed him. He didn't deserve that. But that was an action that didn't need to be taken. He did not need to aggress upon Johnny. There seemed to have been a little bit of a truce. It's understood. I know you can kick the shit out of me. We don't have to fight. He went out of his way to antagonize. And in the Cobra Kai show, LaRusso, and such great work by both Ralph Macchio and William Zabka, they're so good. But despite Daniel having those moments where his character acts like a little bit of a dick, a little bit of a heel, a little bit of a holier than thou, because he is trying to live up to his master, who was really extraordinary. But those moments of, even as angry as I am, I'm not throwing the first punch. You want to fight? You fucking attack me, because I ain't throwing the first punch. And then there are those moments where you see just how good Daniel is at karate. And a moment where he takes on Terry Silver, who is way better martial artist. I like Karate Kid 2. I think it's good. I think it's better than Karate Kid 3. Now, one of the great things about Cobra Kai is that it makes Karate Kid 2 a better movie just by virtue of Chosen's appearance and, man, terrific performances by everybody who came back from Karate Kid 2. And Thomas Ian Griffith as Terry Silver coming back to Cobra Kai makes Karate Kid 3 a better film, because Terry gets to explain just how fucking stupid it was to go that crazy about a fucking juvenile karate tournament. You're a multimillionaire. You're acting like this is a big deal. You're a fucking idiot. What a moron. And he kind of plays around with that. But now they're all adults. And now, in the immortal words of Mr. Miyagi in Karate Kid 2, there's no tournament. This for real. And any kind of a showdown where Terry Silver is involved, really bad things can happen, because he doesn't really give a shit. If he can get away with it, he'll just as likely bump somebody off and shrug his shoulders. I don't care. It's regular combat. Oh, I didn't mean for him to die. Oops. Sorry. Karate Kid, though. They probably should have stopped the series after 3. There was no need for next Karate Kid. I love Michael Ironside, but the character is so, basically it's Richter from Total Recall as a youth karate instructor / kind of a army type of the character's so idiotic, and there's really not much for Pat Morita to do, and there's a little romance in there with Hilary Swank. It's just shit. But for people who have not seen, I would imagine there aren't many, but if you're among the few who have only seen Cobra Kai, because the thing with Cobra Kai that's terrific, one thing I should say that's terrific, you don't have to have seen the movies to get into the TV show, because what the TV show presents is Johnny Lawrence, a guy in his 40s, life's been tough on him, and he had a juvenile rival who is now very successful, who he is jealous of, and who believes kind of fucked him and ruined his life. You don't even need to see the movies. But there were people back in the day saying, you go back to the mid-90s, just watch the first Karate Kid and don't even waste your time. Because there were certain critics that when they saw Karate Kid 2, they said it was disastrous. I remember New York Newsday and the other New York papers thought the film was catastrophically bad. It was a total misfire and botch. That's okay. I think it's fine. It's entertaining. It's stupid. I don't buy it, but it's not that bad. And Karate Kid 3 has some good fight sequences, but I don't like what they did with the character of Daniel. They regressed him, because there's no logic to his attitude in 3. They just picked the wrong script. They should have used a better script. Because Karate Kid 2, the character of Chosen, who Daniel, spoiler alert, defeats in 1-to-1 life and death combat. That character, I'm sorry, that character takes Mike Barnes, the antagonist, the 18-year-old karate wizard. The character of Chosen takes Mike Barnes and carves him up. And Daniel LaRusso took that almost indestructible young character of Chosen and he beat him in hand-to-hand combat. And then suddenly in Karate Kid 3, Daniel LaRusso's skills are gone and he's coward. I just never bought that. It wasn't fair to the character. It just wasn't fair. It's like they chose the wrong script. They could have made a better movie. They just picked the wrong script. Now, to the showrunner's credit, each season of Cobra Kai, to me, has been a home run. They have all been great. Even though I have issues with each season, there are certain things. I didn't quite get some of Robbie's motivations in a few of the seasons, but I feel like they figured his character out better in the last 2 seasons. And it is a fantastic show. As much as there's a lot of fight sequences that are not believable, and people are still going berserk over life and death, karate fights, and struggles, I think the show, unlike the movies, each season has been great. And to me, there have been very few episodes that I didn't think were terrific. Like, I don't remember a single episode, and I'm all caught up. I can't wait for the final season. They say it's going to be in 3 parts. And Ralph even said in his post this morning, we're done working. We are finished. We've wrapped filming, and you're going to love it. It's so good. And I believe him, because there's nothing to indicate from the show so far that they're not, and that they haven't knocked it out of the park, and there isn't going to be something amazing. And I'm also not assuming that the movie that, I guess it's a crossover, because the 2010 Karate Kid with, as I say, Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith was not supposed to take place in the same universe as the original iteration of Karate Kid, Daniel Russo, Mr. Miyagi, etc. But apparently it does. They've kind of retconned. That's a great word that we use for Star Wars. It appears that they're going to retcon it so that my assumption is that Mr. Han and Mr. Miyagi knew each other. It's going to be something simple. They don't have to go crazy. I would accept that maybe Mr. Han spent time in Okinawa. It's going to be something in that ballpark. I'm excited for that movie because why not? The Karate Kid series survived what amounted to at least 2 subpar movies after the great original and the so-so follow-up. But Karate Kid, 40 years old today, unbelievable, released on June 22nd, 1984. And the movie is, readily available all over streaming. I know it was on Netflix. It's been free on Prime. I think that it was on Max. It might be on Paramount. It's a movie you can find on a number of streamers. And if you've never seen the original Karate Kid, I don't like ever telling people to spend their hard-earned money, even if it's a couple of bucks. But if there is a movie that I would recommend to sink a couple of dollars in, if you've only heard of it and so many people telling you, oh my God, this movie's great, I'm going to vouch for it. Your few bucks renting Karate Kid will be money well spent. Karate Kid, released on this day, 1984, directed by John G. Avildsen. A great musical score by, I think, Robert Mark Kamen. I think that's the name of the composer. But starring Ralph Macchio, William Zabka, Pat Morita, Martin Kove as Kreese. That's the name that I was having difficulty remembering. Martin Kove, phenomenal as Sensei John Kreese. I mean, he's good on Cobra Kai, but the way that he plays a character in the original, what a marvelous performance by Martin Kove as, I guess you could say he's a villain. But this has been episode 221 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for taking this Saturday afternoon drive with me on this very steamy and hot and humid day here in New York. But if you caught this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Spotify or iTunes, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, turn on those notifications. I'll be back with episode 222 real soon. Till then, peace.